Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report. This weekend, excited to be from the Plains Cotton Growers annual meeting. A lot to talk about, especially coming fresh off of that USDA Prospective Plantings report last Friday. We have Jody Campeacci as well as Bart Fisher and Brad Wedelman. Jody, I'm going to start with you because as we look at the Prospective Plantings report, there's a couple question marks. One of those came with cotton acres. 10.7 million acres of cotton, 4% change from last year. But what is the biggest question mark and the biggest change you could see from now until the June acreage report from USDA, do you think?
So, I think the real question is that if you take a look at the industry and the trade and what they were expecting, most were expecting a higher number. So we were 10.2 last year, 10.7 this year. I think most were expecting somewhere in the 11.2 to 11.5 range. So within that, I think looking at Texas is probably the biggest question mark. Texas acreage from the planting intentions is not really that much different than last year. And when you look at kind of where is the acreage going, well, it doesn't show that it's actually going to any other principal crops. We actually see a decline in overall primary crop acreage. So, it's still early. I think we could see some changes and maybe some additional acreage could pop up somewhere in Texas.
Yeah, so before we go on, let's talk about those principal acres, because when we see USDA say that we lost 6 million acres of principal acres year over year, that's huge. Even if you look at hay, even if you look at some of the other specialty crops, how do you see a 6 million acre swing in just 1 year?
Again, I think it's just those who filled out the survey, maybe they, nobody has any real great thoughts on any acreage right now on most commodities. So nothing really looks that great right now. So it may be that producers decided that maybe we're going to cut back acreage here, we're going to cut back acreage there. But I don't know. Overall, I expect to see that number coming up with overall acreage when we see the next report.
And Bart, there was, corn acreage. That was a little bit of a surprise too. Some thought that we would see more corn acres than what USDA printed on Friday. But when you look at where corn prices have trended over the past year, is that really a big surprise to you?
Yeah, I think we always look at the intentions report somewhat skeptically, right? It's a very early look. We're talking March 1. We're surveying growers on their intentions, but still, ways out from planting in a lot of cases. And so if you look at the results, which I know you had covered last week, to me it parallels where price projections are. So if we look, from the peak in 22 down to 24, just on corn, as you mentioned, prices are off about 33%. So I don't think it's a surprise to see corn acreage dropping. Also, similarly, not a huge surprise then to see some compensation on both beans and cotton too, because soybeans over that 2-year period, corn's at 33% off, beans about 25% and cotton about 20% off. And so if you look at it relative to one another, to me, the intentions report fairly, well paralleled where the prices we're seeing in the market.
Well, and if you look at prices today, it underscores, what we're talking about here at Plains Cotton Growers is needing a change in the reference price whenever we look at the next farm bill. As you see what's about to come out of the House Ag Committee and as they mock up the version of that farm bill, how big of a change do you expect to see in reference prices?
Yeah, I think that's the million-dollar question right now, right? And a lot of it comes down to funding. So, if you go back to the conversation we were having on prices, and you look beyond this 2-year drop, if you look to the long-term prices are fairly stagnant in the long run. And we just got back from D.C. a week ago where we were doing our baseline outlook for the House and Senate Ag Committees. And if you translate those low long-term prices into farm-level results, the farm-level results, for all the representative farms we maintain around the country, it's not a terribly rosy picture. And not to be negative here today, but to me it highlights exactly why a safety net's needed, particularly if you look. And there's even growing pressure in the Midwest, but certainly in cotton. We have 13 representative cotton farms, and 9 of those by 2029 are classified as either poor in marginal financial condition, mostly in poor financial condition, all because we've got stickiness in input prices, but then we have output prices softening. And so it does point to the need for improvements in the safety net. And with respect to the magnitude, I don't know that we're going to, if you looked at it just in terms of cost of production, we're up, roughly on average 30% from where we had been just in terms of cost. And so that's an easy baseline to start with. But, I don't know that we're going to have the funding to get to 30% increases across the board because we're talking north of $100 billion at that point.
Brad, is it a guarantee that we will see a change in reference price out of this first look of the House version of the Farm Bill?
I think out of the House side, you will see a change in the reference prices. Chairman G.T. Thompson has said over and over again that he wants to look at reference prices and doesn't want to move forward without strengthening the farm safety net.
We know that that requires additional funding. So do we know where that additional funding is coming from?
I think the committee's going to be very creative in the ways that they look, and they're going to look in multiple areas. They're still working with CBO. The Congressional Budget Office has been very difficult to work with. They've been slow to get things back. But luckily, Chairman Arrington has been really nice to work with so far, and the committee's worked well with him, and hopefully they can move on with that and find some additional funding.
Do you expect changes in the conservation program as well?
I think you will see the IRA funding get brought into the Farm Bill, and how that is done is still kind of up in the air. They're still working with Senator Stabenow to see how to do that.
All right, well, from an outlook on prices to some questions on the latest round of disaster aid, we have a lot more to cover. But first, we need to take a quick break right here on U.S. Farm Report.
U.S. Farm Report on the road from the Plains Cotton Growers Annual Meeting is brought to you by Ag Texas Farm Credit Services. Your success, our purpose. Capital Farm Credit. Together, we're better. And by StoneX, your cotton price risk management experts.